So this is Dr. Kavita Singh, Associate Professor in Department of Civil Engineering in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. So today we are going to discuss a topic called as components of database management system. So till now we have discussed about the types of databases, what is DBMS, how it works in GIS, how it is helpful in GIS as a storage, how it is helpful in retrieval of the data, and what are the different types of databases. This all we have discussed in the previous lectures. Now today we'll be discussing about the components of database management system. So let us start with the contents today. So what are the contents in this components of database management system? Components of DBMS, hardware, software, data, procedures, database access language, and people. So these are all topics we are going to learn today. So let us start with the components of DBMS. So what is DBMS? I think you remember in the previous lectures we have already learned about the DBMS. So DBMS stands for the database management system. So it's a storage device where the data is stored in the software from where the data is manipulated, or any kind of retrieval or any analysis if you want to do, you can do through this DBMS process. So DBMS is a type of software by which we can save and retrieve the user's data with a security process. So it is helpful. It's a software type of software which will help us to retrieve the data, and it will help us in the security process also. So DBMS can manipulate the database with the help of a group of programs. So it will help us with the help of a group of programs, like the programs is like the DBMS can also accept the request to retrieve a large amount of data through the users and through third-party software. So DBMS is also gives the permission to the users to use the data according to their needs. The word DBMS contains information regarding the database program and the users. So DBMS itself, it contains the information regarding the database program by the users, and it also provides the interface between the users and the software. It provides the interfaces between the users and the software. In this topic, we are going to discuss the various types of DBMS. Now, there are many components available in the DBMS. So, each component has a significant task in the DBMS. So, what are the different components which we are going to discuss here that we'll learn now. So, a database environment is a collection of components that regulates the use of data management and the group of data. Now here these components consist of people, the technique of handle the database, and the data, the hardware and the software. So these components are consist of different people, database, hardware, software, and these all components which will combinedly make a DBMS, that is database management system. So there are several components available for DBMS. We are going to explain 5 main topics of the database below. So what are the 5 main topics here? Main topics are procedure, hardware, software, data, people, and data access language. So these are the topics which we are going to, these are the main topics, these are the main components of DBMS when we talk about the database management system. So these components are the main components which we are going to learn today, which we are going to discuss today. So first of all, let us start with the hardware. So as you remember in the previous lectures, in components of GIS, we have studied there are different components of GIS, that is hardware and software. Along with that, people and setup is required and the users are required. The same way we have the different components of the DBMS, where we have this hardware, software, people and the users. Now hardware, if you talk about the hardware, here are the hardware means the physical part of DBMS. Hardware means physical part of DBMS. To maintain a DBMS, we need the hardware components. So here the hardware includes the output devices like printer, monitor, etc., and storage devices like hard disk and all. So in DBMS, information hardware is the most important visible part. The equipment which is used for the visibility of the data is printer, computer, and scanner. So it helps us to use for the visibility of the data like computer, scanner, and the printer. So this equipment is used to capture the data and present the output to the uses. Now, with the help of hardware, the DBMS can access and update the database. So, hardware is such a component which will help the DBMS to access the data, update the data, and update the database also, because all the information will be saved in the hardware. If hardware component is not present, if software component is only there, then the DBMS is difficult to maintain. So, the hardware component is the important component which will help the data to access, update the database. So, the server can store a large amount of data which can be shared with the help of the users and its own system. The database can be run in any system that ranges from microcomputers to the mainframe computers. So it will help us to run in the system, and it ranges from the microcomputers to the mainframe of the computers. Now, and this database also provides an interface between the real world to the database. So it provides an interface between the real world to the database system. So when we try to run any database software like MySQL, we can type any commands with the help of our keyboards, and RAM and ROM and processor are the part of our computer system. So we need this all hardware component if we use the softwares like SQL or any kinds of RGS software. We need to we have to give some commands with the help of the keyboard. So if the keyboard is not present, then we are unable to run the software like SQL and RGS process. So if you want to add any non-spatial information also, we need the keyboards to enter the information to that software. So this is how the RAM, ROM and the processor are the part of our computer, which helps us in system to run the hardware, run the setup of the GIS or any kind of program. Okay, so now also we can say that computer software is a set of instructions that used to instruct the computer hardware for the operation of the computer. So hardware components include many of the components like system. We have CPU, we have mouse, keyboard, and this printer all includes in this computer system, and this is how it will work for the let us say the components of the database management system. So hardware is the most important part of the database management system, which will help the users to run the setup properly, to get the output from the data. Now, if you talk about the software, what is the software? Software is the main component of DBMS. What is the software component? Software is defined as collection of programs that are used to instruct the computer about its work. So, what is the software here? Software is defined as a collection of programs. So, like lot of programs like ArcGIS, SQL, or any programming software, these are all programs that are used to instruct the computer about its work. So, for that we need the hardware. So through the hardware, we are going to instruct the computer for the to know about the work about the particular software. So the software consists of set of procedures, programs, and routines associated with the computer system's operations and the performance. Now, some examples of DBMS software includes MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server, DBase, Database, FileMaker, Clipper, FoxPro, Microsoft Access, etc. So these are the different software we can see: Oracle, MySQL, MongoDB, SQL Server, MariaDB, and Microsoft Access, IBM. These are all different softwares which is used in the database management system as a software for working along with the data. So now what is the most important part again here is data. Now you have a hardware, you have a software. Now if hardware and software is available, data is important part of that. So the term data means the collection of any raw fact stored in the database. So collection of any raw fact which is stored in the database. Here the data are any type of raw material from which the meaningful information is generated. So data, like when you talk about data in GIS, we have a spatial and non-spatial, we have a vector and raster. Same the way when you're talking about the other software system, we have a different kinds of data related to the latitude, longitude, any geographical information. That all information we have, that all comes under data. Okay, so the database can store any form of the data. It can be stored in any form of the data, such as structural data, non-structural data, and logical data. So these are the different forms of data which is stored in the software. One is structural data, another one is non-structural data, and the other one is logical. So these are the three things which are converted as data, and it is used in the used as a component and used in the software to run the process and to get the output from it. So the main reason behind discovering the database is to create and manage the data within the database. So the main reason behind the discovering the database is to create, manage the data within the database. So data is most important part of DBMS. Data is the most important part of DBMS. This is the important part because if you have a hardware, if you have a software, and if you don't have the data, there is no use of hardware and then there is no use of the software. There is no component, there is no database at all. So database management itself, it is totally considered on the data. So if you have the data, then only the DBMS will run. So here the database contains the actual data and the metadata. So the DBMS contains the actual data and the metadata. What is the actual data here? Actual data is the data which is already we are having, and metadata is data about the data. So here metadata means data about the data. Okay, so it gives the information. Metadata is data about the data which gives the information about the actual data. So for example, when the user stores the data in a database, some data such as size of the data, when the user stores the data in a database, some data such as size of the data can be easily we can just get to know, and the name of the data, the some data related to the users are stored in the database. So these data are called as metadata. So the data which are stored in the metadata is like, for example, when you talk about experience. So in experience, what type of metadata? So this is the data, and this is about the metadata. Okay, so metadata is what here? Metadata is web page, content, images, mobile app. So this all comes under the metadata. So when you talk about people here is under this data, people is the data. So what is the metadata here? Team, channel, group, business unit, agency, region. So these are all metadata. Okay, this is all metadata. Now creative. What is creative? Creative is the data. So what is metadata here? ID, name, size, tags. So these are all metadata. So what it is giving? It is giving the information, data about data. So this is data. So what is the information? This is about the data. This is called as metadata. Same the way when you talk about product. So this is data. So what is metadata? SKU, name, category. Here same. Campaigns means name, placement, and group and objective. So these are all kinds of metadata which is used in the DBMS as a database. Now, when you come to procedure is also one important component here. So the procedure is a type of general instructions or guidelines for use of DBMS. This instruction includes how to set up the database, how to install the database, how to log in and log out of the database. So if you don't know how to insert the data, if you don't know how to run the data, then it is totally it's not for use. So you should know how to just log in and log out, how to install the data, how to log in and log out. So this instructions should be known. So this instruction should be known with the help of the procedures. So when the procedures are defined properly, then only we should be able to know about the login and logout. How to manage the database, how to take a backup of the database, and how to generate the report of the database. That also we should know. So manage the database, managing the database, taking the backup of the database, and generation of the database, generating the report of the database, that all it is useful in the database system. So the main purpose of procedure is to guide the users during the management and operation of database. So main purpose of the procedure is to guide the users. So what you are guiding the users to manage the operation of the database. Okay. So database procedures can be created into two ways in enterprise. Created into two ways in enterprise architecture. These two ways are below. So one is individual object or default object, and the second one is the operations in the container. So these two are the ways how the procedures in which two ways these are produced in the database. Now under this we have database access language. Now what is database access language? Is the simple language that allows users to write commands to perform the desired operations on the data that is stored in the database. So what is access language? It's a simple language which is used by the users to write the commands, because to make the computer understand, the commands are required to be written. So write the commands to perform the desired operations on the data, and that is stored in the database. So whatever command you are going to give to the computer system, it will be stored in the database. Okay. So database access language is a language used to write commands. It's a language used to write commands to access, upset, delete data stored in the database. Now users can write commands or query the database using database access language before submitting them to the database for the execution. Now through utilizing the language, users can create new databases and tables, insert data and delete the data. So utilizing the language, users can create the data, new databases and tables, insert data and delete the data. So these are all utilizing in the languages. And examples of database languages are SQL, structured query language, MyAccess, Oracle, etc. These are the examples of the database languages. The database language is comprised of two languages, that is data definition language and data manipulation language. So data base language is comprised in two languages. One is data definition language. It is used to construct a database. So this definition language is used to construct a database. Now DDL implements the database schema at the physical, logical and external levels. Now data manipulation language. What is data manipulation language? It is used to access a database. The DML provides the statements to retrieve, modify, insert, delete the data from the database. Now, when you talk about the commands, so the following are commands serves as a base for all the DML commands. So, what are the commands we are going to use in the database management system? So, that we'll see here, like insert, update, delete, log, call, explain, plan. So, whatever commands we are going to give to the database, like insert means it will insert the data, update means it will update the data, delete again if you don't require any kind of data, it will delete the data. So these are the commands which are given to the server. Okay, so these are all commands we can give to the as a base of all DML commands. Okay, so delete the data or log or call or explain or plan. So these are all commands in the database. Now people is also important component of the database when you talk about the database component. So because along with the hardware, software and procedure data, we need people also to manage these databases. So the people who control and manage the database and perform different types of operations on the database in the DBMS, this databases and perform different types of operations on the database in the DBMS. The people include database administrator, software developer and end users. So these all people, database administrator, software developer and end users are the people who are going to manage this database management system, which are going to control the managing database management system and to perform different types of operation in the database in the DBMS. Now database administrator is the one who manages the complete database management system. So they are the administrators who administrate the data properly and they manages the complete database management system. So these people are required to manage this database. Now DBA takes care of security of all the DBMS and its availability, managing the license keys, managing the user accounts and giving the access to the users. These are all comes under the people who are going to manage this database management system. So here people are the most important part here, because how to use the data, how to manage the data. So the database administrator will help us to, and the software developer will help us to update the information and finally give it to the users to work with that kind of data. So if we have a hardware, if we have a software, if we have a data and the procedure, and if people are not there, then we are unable to run the DBMS. So this is also an important component of DBMS, where the people are required to run the information as an administrator, as a software developer and as an end users. So database administrator, database which one of the manages the complete the data management system, and its availability, managing the license and key and managing the user account. So people are only those will help us to check the availability of the data, to manage the license keys, and to how to manage the users accounts and how to access the accounts. This will help us in the database management system. So these are the most important components of DBMS. We have many components, but these are the most important components of DBMS, which helps the users to run the setup of the DBMS. So first one is hardware, the second one is software, and third thing we have seen data, and fourth is the procedure, and fifth is the people. So five types of main components. If you run properly, then we can manage the database system. So these components, the database will totally run on these components, where you can just go through the data which are saved in the server, and you can just go with the analysis process, or any kind of if you want the output from that data, if you want to do any query. So these all components should work together, then only we can go through that all queries and we can get the output of that data. So in the previous lecture, you have if you remember, we have discussed the different types of databases we have. So we have many types of databases. Out of the databases, if we want to run that particular databases, we have to maintain these components to running that particular kind of databases in the computer system. Okay, so I hope you understood about these components of this DBMS, and you can just go through these references to find out the more content about this database management system. You can just go through this NPTEL links, where you can just get the extra information about this DBMS, and if you want to get the information about the theoretical part, you can just go through this MNG Reddy book for the good content. So this I hope you understood about these components of the DBMS. So components of the DBMS is very much important to run the setup of the database management system. So that's all for today. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.